Hey, welcome to Inspiration Station, where we build a sanctuary for your creative spark together. I'm Karina Pardis, a composer, activist, chocoholic, and self-care mom, and I am so glad that you are here. This is a place for you whenever you need encouragement or a reminder to believe in you. Today is about a topic that is curious and sometimes uncomfortable. We're talking about failure. It happens to all of us. We can see our common humanity in our struggles and our failures. And when it happens, it often isn't fun. However, I want to talk about how finding opportunities on purpose to practice failure can help us embrace the essential role failure plays in our lives, as well as helps us to improve our creativity and the practices that we have surrounding that. All skills take practice to do well. Everything that we want to learn how to do takes practice. And practice implies trying and failing and trying and failing and making mistakes and keeping going anyways and learning how to do things better through iteration. And there is a lot to learn from practicing failure. The first thing that we need to do is define failure. And honestly, I think this is something that is deeply personal and also very situational. Failure can be very different between our different relationships or our job or something fun that we're doing. There are low-risk failures and high-risk failures that can seem really scary. Don't let yourself get so scared that it stops you from learning about this. It's just important to recognize in whatever endeavor you are currently pursuing, what does failure look like, and take the time to define that. And once we have defined that, then we can move towards practicing how to involve failure in your opportunities and endeavors, in your goals and in your dreams. Albert Hubbard said the greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing you will make one. And Peter Nguyen said that failure is not as bad as you think it will be, nor is it an absolute end. Mistakes are proof that you are trying, and that is important evidence that you can hold for yourself when you're doing something that is really important to you. When we think about practice, one way to define practice is that it is controlled failure, and it's what makes us be able to progress. And it's what allows progress to become permanent. Permanent progress is us being able to find a path to continued growth. It does not mean that we are constantly getting better with less and less failure and more success, but it's us being able to refine our efforts to find new mistakes so that we can keep building and growing. That's part of the growth process. I want you to do a thought exercise and think about what would happen if you stopped trying the first time you failed. What would happen if you kept going, but then stopped trying after the 5th time you failed? Or the 100th time that you failed? Or the nth? Failure to the nth degree. What would happen if you stopped at any point of failure? Brené Brown said, "Daring is saying, I know I will eventually fail, and I'm still all in." It's this idea that we can acknowledge, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling apprehensive, I'm feeling super crappy, I'm feeling like I am a failure, and identifying ourselves by that one thing. I'm feeling X, but I'm going to do this anyways. Being able to acknowledge, even though I'm feeling this way, I can still act. I think it is very important to not define ourselves by our failures. We can't be defined by our failures, and we cannot be defined by our successes because neither of those are permanent. You are permanent. We exist outside of our failures and successes. Eloise Ristad said, when we give ourselves permission to fail, we, at the same time, give ourselves permission to excel. Sometimes stopping and moving into a different direction is the right choice. And that's a really important thing that you can decide through self-reflection. But I hope that failure is not the catalyst of that change. I hope that change comes from a greater understanding of what is important to you. We should seek out opportunities to practice low-risk failures. Failures will come, whatever you're doing, as long as you are actually experiencing and actively participating in living as a human being. Failures will come. And some of those will be high risk and some of them will be low risk. And that's just part of living. But as we seek out low risk failures, we learn lots of skills. First, let's talk about examples of low risk failures. Some low risk failures that I personally have practiced are baking bread. It is really easy to fail when you are learning to bake bread. Sometimes you don't put enough yeast in. Even if you are following the recipe, you can mix it too much, and that destroys the buildup of the gluten that you need. Sometimes you can overprove it or underprove it, which means that you let it sit to rise for too long or too little, and that breaks down the molecules differently. And so sometimes your bread is more flat, or sometimes it's more hard. Sometimes you leave it in the oven for too long and then you can't even bite into it. There are plenty of ways to fail when you are making bread. I've also experienced low-risk failures when I am doing hand lettering or some sort of art project. It might not come out exactly the way that I imagined. And sometimes that's really frustrating. But the nice thing is that I can try again. And the more I try and practice those failures, the better I become at that skill. And as I'm doing this, I am learning skills that I can apply to my high-risk failures, which are inevitable. Some of these skills include self-compassion, being able to hold space for myself and understand that that was a struggle. That was something I did not like. It created a moment of suffering without judging how big or small that suffering is. Just acknowledging that and letting myself know that I am here for me. I am still worthy of love, regardless of failure or success. Persistence and resilience. Being able to keep going and building trust in myself as I work through the physical and emotional stressors that occur because of failure. Learning planning and time and energy management. Being able to understand the importance of breaks and resting. This is resting, not stopping. Resting to come back after the break and being able to make that rest meaningful. True rest is something we are actively doing, not just passively sitting to indulge in whatever activity. That can be fun too, but that's not true rest. It does not prepare us for the stress that will come when we jump back into the game. So learning that is really wonderful. The opposite of that is learning how integral play is in our work. And again, play is something that we actively create in order to rejuvenate our soul and our motivations, and to find that place within ourselves where our creative spark lives without an agenda. Learning to ask for help is a huge skill that we can apply from our low-risk failures to the high-risk ones when they happen. It is never a weakness to ask for help. It is only ever a strength, because when we invite other people into our lives to work with us on things, the outcome is always better than it could have been if we leave it at a do-it-yourself, I'm strong enough mode. When we engage in these low-risk failure activities, recognizing that part of the point is to fail and experience what that is like, we are able to maintain within ourselves the mindset of an amateur. The true meaning of amateur is a student of learning. That is something that is really important to our creative process. The last skill that I think is really important to mention is being able to recognize and celebrate your progress. Sometimes when you bake one loaf of bread and then you bake the second loaf of bread, you're not going to always recognize every part of progress that you made between those two actions. It takes practice to recognize those things. It takes practice to see the improvements that you are making when the practice often can be really tedious or overwhelming. Another crucial part of failure is defining what success is and what it looks like, because they go hand in hand together. You really can't have one without the other. Arianna Huffington said, "Failure is not the opposite of success, it is part of success." And Sumner Redstone said, "Success is not built on success. It's built on failure. It's built on frustration. Sometimes it's built on catastrophe." I believe that failure is not final. The only thing it finalizes is the decision about if we are going to continue or not. And I believe that what you are doing matters. And I hope you continue. We can prepare ourselves to make that choice every time it comes up by practicing and seeking out failures in low-risk environments. When we respond in a loving and understanding way, remembering that our common humanity comes from struggle and failure, I believe that permanent progress can be found and created by anyone, including you. Don't exclude yourself from it. Thank you so much for listening today, and I'm excited to talk to you again soon. Until then, stay creative. Here in this moment with human needs and growing dreams, there's so much out there in the world. Commercials and billboards are telling you just what to do and asking who you think you are. Which voice will you listen to?